Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my most anticipated fantasy releases of 2019 video. Normally this is my most anticipated fantasy/sci-fi releases, but for the first time in a couple of years, I do not have a single sci-fi book that I'm looking forward to in 2019, which is kind of surprising. I really can't believe it. There are maybe like a few that I'm looking forward to, but nothing that I'm looking forward to more than any of the fantasy books on this list. So the way that I decided to do this list is I'm going to be talking about the fantasy books that I am most excited for that I have not yet read. I might have them, but I haven't necessarily read them yet. But I also just wanted to quickly shout out two that I have already read that I really loved. The first being The Wicked King, in a surprise to no one. You know that I love this series. It's the second book after The Cruel Prince. It was a phenomenal follow-up, and I'm literally dying for the third book. I can't even tell you how many Wicked King book boxes I ordered. So good. So good, guys. And the other one is The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman, which we actually just got a beautiful cover for. I really enjoyed this one. This was kind of like fantasy, but on the verge of like paranormal-esque also. And it follows a girl who just moves into this town. It's very like Riverdale-esque, and there's this like secret history going on. There's a lot of legacy with these founding families of this town. They are all tasked with protecting the town from the beast that is lurking in the woods, but some bodies start showing up and the townspeople kind of start revolting, and it is just so good. Those are two that I've already read that I loved, that I can 100% recommend, like beyond a doubt. The rest of this list are the books that I'm looking forward to that I have not yet read. So here we go. These are all going to be in release date order. They're not ranked. They're just in release date order because I figured that was the easiest way to organize them. So the first book on my list is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi, and this book is actually on my December TBR, so I already talked about it in that video, but I had to talk about it again here because I really am just like so excited for this one. It takes place in Paris in 1889, and it follows treasure hunter and wealthy hotelier Severin Montané-Alaire. So this all-powerful society, the Order of Babel, seeks him out in order to get his help to find this artifact. And in exchange, they offer him his true inheritance, which is something he never thought that he would have access to. So he recruits this team of 4 people to help him try to find this artifact, and they have to go through the glittering streets of Paris, and I am so here for this setting. Like, I cannot wait to read it, but it also sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a heisty kind of novel. Like, it's giving me Six of Crows vibes, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The next book on my list is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. This one comes out on January 29th, and the funny thing about this choice is that I literally cannot tell you anything about it for fear of spoiling myself on the Grisha trilogy. I have recently read Siege and Storm, which is the second book, and I met Nikolai. I fell in love with Nikolai, and I am obviously picking up a book that is just all about him, but I still have to read the third book, Ruin and Rising, and yeah, I don't want to know the synopsis for King of Scars because I don't want to ruin anything for myself. Nikolai, like I said, became like an instant favorite character of mine, and even though I'm not reading the synopsis, I think the title, King of Scars, is enough of a spoiler to let me know what direction Nikolai's character is heading in Ruin and Rising, but I am not mad. I can't wait to read that and to read this. Number 3 on my list was also in my December TBR video, and it is another Paris book, and that is Onshantae by Gita Trelease. This one actually takes place in Paris exactly 100 years earlier than The Gilded Wolves, so it's in 1789, and we're following our main character, Camille, who has some magical abilities. She is recently orphaned, and her brother leaves with the rest of her family's money, so she uses her magic in order to transform herself into Baroness de la Fontaine, and she goes and she infiltrates the Palace of Versailles, which is like my favorite time period in the world. I cannot wait to read this one. So she goes there and she takes up gambling in an effort to try to help her poor family, but the longer that she stays there, the harder it is for her to reconcile her resentment of the nobles with her enchantment of the palace. Camille ends up losing control of her secrets, and the game that she's involved in gets a whole lot deadlier, and all of this is going on while the French Revolution is just like beginning to erupt. I cannot wait to read this one. I'm honestly so excited. I know that she also, like, when she returns to Paris, she meets a balloonist, and I think there's gonna be a romance between the two of them, and like that just sounds so French and like so quaint. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. Like, I've been jumping up and down because I can't believe that I have this book already. I can't wait to read it. The next one on my list is an enormous monster, and it is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This one comes out on March 26th, and it is a standalone fantasy novel involving dragons, and it takes place in a queendom, so a lot of the main characters are going to be female, which obviously is very appealing. I haven't actually read any of Samantha Shannon's other books, so if I enjoy Priory, then I will probably end up trying to check out The Bone Season. But this is an epic fantasy novel that follows two sides, so there's the East and the West, and both territories refuse to parley. Side note, I learned the word parley from Pirates of the Caribbean, just in case you were wondering. And the story is actually told over 4 different perspectives, so we get 2 perspectives of people from the East and 2 perspectives of people from the West. The 2 from the West are Iad Duran, who is an outsider in the court, but she has risen into the position of lady-in-waiting for the queen, and she actually uses forbidden magic in order to keep the queen safe. Then we have Loth Beck, who is the heir apparent to the northern province and a very close friend of the queen. Then across the sea in the east, we have Tane, who is a character that has trained for her entire life to be a dragon rider. And lastly, we have Dr. Niclés Roos. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. This character is a doctor and an alchemist who used to live in the west but was banished to the east by the queen. While all of this war and stuff is going on, there are assassins that are coming to try to kill the queen, and the queen is also struggling because she needs to produce a daughter to be her heir in order to save the queendom. And I'm quite honestly just so excited that this story is going to be so female-centric and that there are going to be dragons, but it's huge. Look at that. That is like, I can already tell you that is the biggest book on my TBR in 2019. Number 5 on my list is none other than The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This book is coming out on April 2nd. Oh my god, I cannot wait to read this one. Magnus Bane is my favorite character within the entire Shadowhunter verse, and I'm so looking forward to getting a story, a trilogy actually, of him and Alec, and it actually takes place after the Mortal War. So the two of them decide to leave New York and to go and travel the world and kind of like enjoy themselves after all of the traumatic things that just happened. As I'm sure you can imagine, trouble just seems to follow Magnus wherever he goes. It's no longer on Goodreads as part of the synopsis, but an early synopsis that I read also mentioned something about a cult called the Crimson Hand that Magnus was kind of responsible for beginning. And I believe they're going to be kind of hunting Magnus because he's in possession of the Book of the White, and there are a lot of people that want to get their hands on that. I'm really excited for this one because, like I said, Magnus and Alec are like 2 of my favorite characters within the Shadowhunter world, but also I feel like Cassandra Clare's writing just gets better and better with every single book that she writes. This one is obviously co-written with someone else, but this is an adult novel, which I think will be really interesting. I can't wait. Like, she has so many ideas, and I'm so glad that she has not yet decided to like write something outside of this universe because I'm addicted to it. Number 6 on my list is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, and this one also comes out on April 2nd. First of all, can we just appreciate this stunningly beautiful cover? I am such a sucker for good architecture, and I really love this whole like cityscape that we've got going on here, and I think the choice of the colors it's perfect. I love it. I love it so much. Wicked Saints is one of those fantasy novels that sounds like it has like everything. We've got a girl who can speak to gods, we've got a prince who is in danger, and we've got a boy with a monstrous secret. So together the 3 of them must assassinate the king in order to stop the war that is going on. And the book has major like gothic-y vibes, and there's a forbidden romance that is just threatening to tip the scales from light to dark. Like, seriously, just give me this book now. I'm so excited for this one. Number 7 on my list is Finale by Stephanie Garber. This one's coming out on May 7th, and this is the third and final book in the Caraval trilogy. I'm so happy that this series got expanded upon. I really loved Caraval when I read it, but then when I read Legendary, I was like, wow, this is even better. Like, how is this possible? Legendary was out of this world. So our third and final book, Finale, is actually taking place 2 months after the end of Legendary. So there is not going to be a Caraval that is going on during this book. It's going to just follow the events of the last one. But if you have read Legendary, you will know that the stakes are very high at this moment in time because things happened. And this is totally not confirmed, but this is like what I think is going on. So in Caraval, we got Scarlett's perspective. In Legendary, we got a different perspective. And I have a feeling that in the third book, in Finale, we're gonna get dual perspectives between the two of them because we're gonna need to wrap up each of these characters' storylines, and I feel like only they can do that for us. I honestly just can't wait, and I really love this cover. I think the yellow heart is just stunning. I really love all the purple covers that we've been getting recently, and this one is no exception. Next on my list is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This one's coming out on June 4th, and I am really looking forward to this book. Some of you might be surprised to see this one here because An Enchantment of Ravens was not my favorite book, but I think part of why that was is because it was short and I wanted so much more from it, but Sorcery of Thorns is like pretty much double the size of An Enchantment of Ravens, so I really feel like this one has the potential to be a new favorite for me. I also can never resist a Charlie Bowater cover. Like, this is just gorgeous. But the premise also really appeals to me because it takes place in a magical library. So it follows an apprentice at that library who has to battle a powerful sorcerer in order to save the world. Honestly, you had me at magical library. So the books within this library are actually kept in like iron chains because when they're provoked, they turn into grotesque monsters of ink and leather. While our main character Elizabeth is at this library, the most dangerous grimoire on the shelf actually gets released, and Elizabeth ends up being implicated in how this book kind of escaped. So the only person that she can turn to for help is her sworn enemy, and that is the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorne. So Elizabeth ends up finding herself entangled in this like centuries old conspiracy, and she starts beginning to question everything that she has ever been taught because she was always raised to believe that sorcerers are just plain evil. I'm very much looking forward to this one. Next on my list is The Beholder by Anna Bright. This one comes out on June 4th. This is a new young adult fantasy series, and it has comp titles of The Odyssey and Cinderella, which is a really interesting combination. Also, like, I just have to mention it again, but 2019 fantasy covers are like everything. I feel like they're like my lifeblood. This is amazing. This ship looks like it was carved of like bone or something, and I love the rose gold like foil accents. It's just so pretty. So this book follows a main character named Sella who is sent across the Atlantic by her evil stepmother to meet a series of potential suitors. And she's basically told that if she does not get engaged while she is away, then she should not even bother trying to come home. But it turns out that the stakes of her voyage might be even higher than her trying to find her happy ending. I really like that there's going to be a travel aspect to this novel, and I've also heard that it is good for people who enjoyed the Selection series. So I am really hoping that it has those over-the-top fun scenes and like just extravagant clothing. And I also really like that part of the novel is going to take place at sea. It just sounds like it's going to be so good. Next on my list is The Stormcrow by Kaylin Josephson, and this book comes out on July 9th. Again, cover. Beautiful. This one follows a fallen princess as she ignites a rebellion to bring back the magical elemental crows that were stolen from her empire. So this book actually takes place in a tropical kingdom, which I think is really cool. Like, it's very unlike anything that I've read in fantasy. Usually fantasy tends to have a colder feel than a tropical feel. So the princess's land ends up getting invaded by a rival empire, and pretty much everything is just destroyed. And this leaves her in this like very deep depression, and she's not really capable of ruling at this point. Her sister has kind of taken over the day-to-day, like handling everything going on in the empire. Then the princess is forced to accept a marriage proposal by the crown prince of the empire that attacked her empire. So she is like not really having that, but that is just what she needs to kind of light a fire underneath herself and to go and fix everything that's wrong in her kingdom. Her and her sister find a hidden crow egg, and they formulate a plan to hatch this egg in secret and to reclaim everything that they've lost. Next on my list is another crow book, and that is The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen. This one comes out on July 30th, and yet again, amazing fantasy cover. We've only gotten a small snippet of the synopsis so far, but just from that, I myself am like very intrigued by it. So we have a crown prince who actually faked his own death, and he gets discovered by the future chieftain of the crows, who is pretty eager to slit his throat and reap the rewards of finding this prince. But the prince ends up making her an offer that she can't refuse. He promises that in exchange for protection from the ruthless queen, he will take care of her and the crows once he is reigning. Then we also have the prince's cunning bodyguard, who has always been there. I think that he can even like transform himself into looking like the prince in order to protect him. He's kind of starting to want something to call his own and not necessarily just be around to protect the prince. This one just came on my radar when the cover was released during YALLFest, and I'm really glad that it did because it sounds like it's going to be very good. Number 12 on my list is The World of Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This one's coming out on September 3rd. It is no secret that I love Sarah J. Maas and I love all of her books, so obviously I was very much looking forward to this book, but it wasn't until I was attending Sarah's event in New York for Kingdom of Ash when I found out that this book, which I had assumed would just be kind of an encyclopedia type book and, you know, talk about, like, just define the different things within the world of Throne of Glass and have, like, very pretty illustrations and stuff. And while it is going to be those things, Sarah actually revealed that she's going to be writing new snippets of the story, and we'll get to see some scenes with our characters, like, after the events of Kingdom of Ash, which now I can't wait for this book, and that's why it landed on this list. Otherwise, it was definitely not going to be on here because I didn't think that it was, like, a story to read. Next on my list is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, and this one is coming out on October 8th. Vampires, just please come to me. I am so excited for this book, I can't even tell you. I have been eagerly awaiting a vampire revival, and Renee's like brutal creatures that she set forth sound like it could be exactly the fix that I'm looking for. This book takes place in New Orleans in 1872, and it follows a main character who was a dressmaker in Paris, but she was forced to flee her life there, and she came and is starting over in New Orleans. Her name is Celine, so her and 6 other girls are actually taken in by this convent, and she quickly becomes enamored with the vibrant and dangerous city of New Orleans. Celine ends up catching the eye of Sebastian Saint Germain, who's the leader of Le Coeur des Lions, which is like this very powerful underground society. Then one of the girls at Celine's convent turns up dead, and Celine ends up battling her attraction for Sebastian with the fact that he could potentially be the person responsible for this death. So then more and more bodies keep piling up, and New Orleans becomes abuzz with the fact that there is a serial killer on the loose. All of the murders keep going unsolved, and then Celine decides to take matters into her own hands. And then this is by far my favorite line of the synopsis, is that these vampires don't sparkle, they slay. And I'm just so here for this, like, cannot wait. I wish that it didn't come out in October. I wish it came out in January, but yeah, I'm like living for this. Next on my list is, of course, The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This one's coming out on November 5th, and this is Erin Morgenstern's next novel after The Night Circus, which was written like 8 years ago. So I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for her to announce a new book, and I'm so excited that it's coming. I really can't wait to read this one. It sounds like it's going to be so interesting. Follows a grad student from Vermont, and he is reading a book of stories when he comes across one that is actually a story from his own childhood. He's very confused, but he ends up finding 3 clues: a bee, a sword, and a key. and they lead him to a masquerade in New York City, to a secret club, and then to an underground, like, labyrinth secret library. It sounds so good. So he teams up with two people who actually work in this library, and the three of them go to explore this magical world, and he is trying to find out what his purpose is since he was obviously included in this book. I honestly just cannot wait for this one, and because it comes out on November 5th, I feel like this could very well be one of those books that there are book expo stampedes for, if there are even arcs of it, because I think there are so many people that are just dying for this one. And finally, the last book on my list is The Hazelwood Book 2 by Melissa Albert. At the time of filming, there has not yet been a title reveal or a date reveal, just that it's expected to be published in 2019, but I would imagine that it's going to be in the latter half of the year, since I feel like we would have gotten more if it was going to be like summer or something. So I'm thinking this will be like a November, December book. So The Hazelwood 2 is actually a companion novel to the first book. There's actually like no information at all about it online, but from attending some book events, what I have gathered is that we are probably going to be following Ellery Finch, who is the character that Alice was with for a lot of The Hazelwood. I'm sure that we'll end up finding out his side of the story and then hopefully get more about where his character goes from the events of The Hazelwood. Like I said, there's like zero information online about this book yet, but I really loved The Hazelwood, so I am very much looking forward to this one, as well as, like, quite frankly, anything that Melissa Albert writes in the future. I know that I'm gonna pick it up, and I'm especially looking forward to that bind up of Althea's Fairy Tales when that's coming out. I think that's probably 2020-ish. And okay, so those are the 15 books that have made my list, but I will have you know that I struggled until the very last minute to decide which books I wanted to include here, because I was down to 3 that I was like, I don't know which one to pick. It was The Stormcrow, which is the one that I ultimately went with, but the other two that I was between were A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer, which is a fantastical Beauty and the Beast retelling, and this one comes out in January, and Bloodleaf by Crystal Smith. This one comes out in March, and I would highly recommend going onto Goodreads and looking at the synopses for these two. I just don't want to be editing forever, and I really wanted to have only 15 on my list, but look at me cheating and finding other ways of including more things in this video. So those are all of the books that made my most anticipated fantasy list. Let me know if you're looking forward to any of the ones that I've mentioned, or if you've discovered anything new from watching this video, which hopefully you did. I hope that you enjoyed it. That's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!